My husband cheated with his receptionist and my family took his side. Now they're begging to be in my life again, but my answer wiped their smiles away. So, for some backstory before I talk about what is happening right now, 5 years ago, I got divorced from my ex-husband, and that is when my parents cut ties with me. My ex Nick cheated on me with his office receptionist, and I found out about it while going through his phone. I had my suspicions for a really long time. And one day, I finally decided to confirm it and go through his messages and stuff. And that's when I realized that our marriage was over. It was very difficult for me because Nick and I had been together for almost a decade before we got married. We had been childhood sweethearts because his parents and my parents were family friends, and that's how we had met and started dating. We had an on and off relationship after we graduated from high school, but at 22, our parents started pressuring us to get married, so we did. But things didn't really work out for us after we got married, and we would fight pretty frequently. Even then, the thought of cheating never crossed my mind, but he went ahead and did it. I was extremely hurt when I found out about his affair. So, I decided to move out of our house that day itself. And obviously, my first instinct was to head over to my parents' place, but I guess Nick had spoken to them by then because he must have guessed that I was going to head over there. And he was pretty desperate to stop me from leaving. So, he had asked my parents not to let me in, and they actually didn't. I still remember standing outside their door, begging them to let me in so I could stay with them for a couple of days until I could arrange a place for myself. But they just told me that they were not going to entertain this because no matter what had happened, Nick was still my husband and we could make it work. I even told them that Nick cheated on me, but they didn't seem to find anything wrong with it and told me that they were aware of the fact that Nick had been cheating because he himself had confessed to it when he had called them up. But apparently, according to my parents, a marriage cannot be broken by just one person. So indirectly, they were blaming me for everything, and I wasn't even surprised since that's exactly what their attitude had been towards me ever since I got married. And I don't even know why I expected them to be helpful back then. Even before I had found out that Nick had been cheating on me, I had shared my marital problems with my parents several times and told them that I did not think staying with him was a good idea anymore. But they had always told me that I was way too ambitious and I did not give enough time to my marriage, which is why it was not working out. And even on that day when I tried to get them to let me stay with them, they made it seem like I was the one at fault because I was never dedicated to my marriage like I was to my work. So when they started implying that I was equally at fault, I had had enough and I decided to leave right that instant. I have a few good friends, and even though I was not ready to share the news of my divorce at the time, I decided to visit a friend of mine and tell her everything I was going through, and she was kind enough to let me stay with her for a couple of weeks. In those few weeks, I spoke to a lawyer, filed for a divorce, and started looking for an apartment where I could stay. Back then, the only people who were there for me emotionally and who supported me throughout were my friends. My parents had absolutely nothing to do with me, and the only time they would even try to contact me was when they wanted to tell me how big of a mistake I was making by leaving my cheating husband. Nick kept trying to get in touch with me. He kept saying that we could still make it work and that all we needed was some marriage counseling so we could put this all behind us. And he kept apologizing as if it would fix anything. And my parents, unsurprisingly, were on his side and kept telling me to forgive him. I blocked them all out of my life. And soon enough, they stopped trying to get in touch with me as well. And eventually, by the time the divorce was finalized, I was not in touch with any of these people since then. I haven't been in touch with my parents. And I don't regret it either. We do get to see each other occasionally when we attend events hosted by other members of the family, but we ignore each other. I know they don't regret what they did to me either, so I'm fine with this. Now, fast forward to 5 years later, and I'm currently engaged to my boyfriend, Charlie. He and I have been together for the past 3 years, and they have been some of the most wonderful years of my life. We met at a restaurant, his restaurant to be more specific. He approached me while I was out with my friends, and it was not until much later that I found out he was the owner of the restaurant. We went out on a couple of dates, and soon enough, we got pretty serious about each other. Within a couple of weeks, I found out that not only did he own that restaurant, he came from a similar business background, too. His father is the owner of one of the biggest bakery chains in the state. And that's why he grew up to be quite interested in everything related to the kitchen as well, which is how he ended up with his own restaurant. I was quite impressed by that, but honestly, it didn't matter to me much since I'm a working woman and I plan on working even after marriage. I've never been after his money, but I can't say the same for my parents because as soon as I found out that I was with this guy, they did not waste any time in reaching out to me trying to get back into my life. This happened last week, a few days after I announced my engagement on social media. I'm guessing that some relative decided to take it upon themselves to tell my parents that I was engaged once again. And they must have done their own research and found out about Charlie and the family that he belongs to. Literally within 3 days of my announcement, They reached out to me via email and said that they had found out I was engaged and they wanted to congratulate me. They also wanted to apologize for their past behavior and said that they regretted not getting in touch with me in these past couple of years, but they wanted to make it up to me by being there for me for my wedding. They did not mention anything about Charlie or the kind of family he came from in that email. At least they were smart enough to do that, but I'm not stupid enough to fall for that. The fact that they were reaching out to me only after my engagement, even though apparently they had felt bad about it throughout and had wanted to reach out to me earlier, was suspicious enough. So, I decided not to reply to them, and if they really wanted to be a part of my life again, they would reach out to me again. And they did reach out to me again. And in the second email, they kind of exposed themselves. They told me that they had read a lot about Charlie and his family. And they were very impressed by the kind of guy that I had decided to go for. I don't know why, but it just sounded like I was with Charlie for a purpose, which was really not the case. And it really rubbed me the wrong way. But it was about to get worse because in that email itself, they had said that it was because of Charlie and his family that they had decided to reach out to me because they were so proud of me because now I was going to be part of such a prestigious lineage. It all just reeked of pretentiousness. And I was also quite offended by the fact that even though I had plenty of achievements of my own, they were most interested in the fact that I'd been able to make my own way into a rich family through marriage. I don't know why they even sent that email. I don't think they understand that this was only going to make the situation worse for them. Anyway, after that email, I just blocked them and everything was quiet for a couple of days until last evening. I moved into Charlie's apartment about a year ago and I've been living here since. I haven't invited a lot of family over to this place. Only a couple of my close friends and cousins know where I live. So, there was no way that they would have told my parents, but even then, somehow my parents managed to find out. And when I asked them, they didn't tell me how. Anyway, they showed up at our house last evening, and both Charlie and I were pretty surprised when we saw them standing outside. He knows the entire history with my parents about my divorce and how they reacted to it, and it's safe to say that he does not approve of it. He was the one who had opened the door, and as soon as he saw my parents, he called me to speak to them. Thankfully though, he did not leave my side, and while I was speaking to my parents, he was holding my hand the entire time because he knew this was going to be extremely difficult for me. Anyway, my parents started off by apologizing to me and told me that they did not want to make it seem like they were more interested in Charlie and his family than they were in my forgiveness. And they were being honest about the fact that they had wanted to reach out to me several times over the past couple of years, but they had always failed because they knew that I would be upset with them for how they had behaved in the past. I told them that that was not a valid reason to not have reached out to me. And in fact, their reaction to my divorce had been really insensitive, and even if they had reached out to me, I wouldn't have forgiven them then. Neither do I plan on forgiving them right now because 5 whole years have passed since my divorce and I don't need them anymore. I was very stern with them and I told them I wanted them to leave without much of a fuss. I didn't know how they had found out my address, but if they showed up again, then I would be forced to call the cops. After that, I was about to turn around and shut the door, but I don't know what got into my dad. He just started yelling at me and told me that I was being way too egoistic and cocky and I couldn't just treat them like this because now I was getting married into a rich family. That really upset me because it was completely uncalled for and also completely untrue. I was not acting like that because I was married into his family. And I'm pretty sure that anyone in their right mind would not have said that. So I gave it right back to him and I told him that this was not about me marrying into a rich family. This was about them and their behavior. They had had 5 years to fix themselves. But in spite of that, they were still the same horrible people. And I wanted nothing to do with them. I knew for a fact that I was doing the right thing by cutting them out of my life permanently, and I had no intention of forgiving them at any point. After I said that, instead of speaking to me, they started addressing Charlie and told him that he needed to watch out for my attitude problem because that was what had ended my last marriage. They went out of their way to mention that Nick had cheated on me with the office receptionist whom he had known for a couple of months. And now they were happily married with a child while I was still just at the engagement stage. And according to them, they believed I could never get ahead and have a happy family with anyone because I was always just focused on showing everyone how I was superior to everyone. Apparently, I had done that in the past by focusing too much on my work instead of my marriage. And now I was walking down that path once again by acting superior just because Charlie was rich. So, in their opinion, my superiority complex is what had cost me my first marriage and it was going to cost me my second as well. And they warned Charlie about me. But, thankfully, my fiancé was having none of it. He just told my parents that he was not willing to take relationship advice from people like them. And if I wanted to brag about his wealth, I was free to do so because it was a fact. He was rich and I was indeed getting married to him. He also told them that whether I had an attitude problem or not, it was for him to deal with and they did not need to worry about him because we were certainly not worried about them. And the final thing that he said actually even made my jaw drop, because he told them he was glad that my ex had found love with the woman he had an affair with. And he was very glad that in spite of having 5 years to reflect upon how they had behaved with me, they were still being supportive of Nick instead of me. But it didn't matter now, because all of them combined were still nowhere near our net worth. And then he shut the door while my parents continued to freak out at us outside. After a while, they left us alone, and I honestly didn't think that this would go any further. But then this morning, I received a phone call from my paternal grandparents, and they started lecturing me about how badly my fiancé and I had behaved with my parents. It was a bit of a shock, because my grandparents have mostly been on good terms with me. Even though they have been in touch with my parents for the past 5 years, they have always maintained a neutral stance on this entire situation. But now all of a sudden, they believe I should apologize to my parents, especially because of what Charlie said to them about our net worth. They said that my parents might have messed up once in the past, but apart from that, they had always tried to be good to me. I'm not sure how true that is, because my relationship with my parents has always been a bit strained and difficult right from childhood. But it is true that they have always provided for me and have done their best to give me a comfortable life, which I cannot deny, and that's what my grandparents doubled down on, that I need to be grateful to them for that. And now I cannot just brag about how much money I have, because truth be told, it's not even my money. It's my in-laws who are rich. I'm still in the same tax bracket as they are, and I have no right to be gloating like this. I tried to tell them that it was Charlie who had responded to them, as I was not even interested in speaking to them. But they said it didn't matter who had said it. What mattered was that I had let it go, even though it was really humiliating for my parents. They told me that the least I could have done was stand up to them, even if I did not want to forgive them at the moment. I tried to explain to them that there were a lot of other factors too, and they also said a lot of stuff about me, but my grandparents said that none of it mattered. They only cared about my behavior, and they would speak to my parents separately about whatever they did not think was right about their behavior. I was getting a bit agitated after a while, because I felt like we were talking in circles and they were just not ready to understand my point of view. But then they told me that a man who could not respect my family would never be able to respect me. And then they just hung up. And of course I love Charlie. I don't think he's done anything wrong, but from my grandparents' reaction, I'm seriously doubting what I have done. Am I the asshole for allowing my rich fiancé to insult my estranged parents on the basis of their mediocre financial condition? They were the ones who were harping on about how I was becoming too cocky and arrogant just because I was marrying into a rich family. I don't think I've done anything wrong, and neither has my fiancé. So, I don't need to feel guilty about anything. I've discussed this with him as well, and he's made it very clear that he's not apologizing to anybody who has disrespected me, not just once, but every chance they get. Even the last interaction we had when they showed up, that had been very disrespectful in itself, because even when I had told them that I did not want to talk to them and I did not plan on forgiving them, they refused to leave and made me look like the bad guy just because I did not want to entertain their nonsense. Charlie told me that he had known that my parents were not good people because of what I had told him earlier. But after meeting them and speaking to them, he knew that they were awful, and he would not advise me to forgive them or speak to them at any point. And I agree. When I told him about what my grandparents had said, he brought up a pretty valid point. He told me that so far they had stayed out of the drama because it was convenient for them. But just as soon as it was my parents who got hurt, they did not think twice before getting involved. As long as I was the one hurting, they were fine with it. But as soon as their darling son got offended, they came after me. And that was something that I should think about before I took their words seriously. And I thought about it. He definitely makes a good point. In the past 5 years, every time I would try to talk to my grandparents about my relationship with my parents, they would tell me that I had to sort it out myself and that they did not want to get involved. So eventually, I stopped trying to vent to them because I knew that they would not entertain it. But now, I guess it was just a way for them to stay on good terms with all of us and be diplomatic. I guess they don't plan on being diplomatic anymore, though, because it's very obvious that their priority is my father, not me. It was just foolish of me to expect them to be any different. Anyway, I'm glad that I have Charlie by my side, because so far it honestly seems like he is more angry about all of this than I am. And it's pretty cute. Very honestly, since it goes to show just how much he cares for me. It's been a week since my grandparents contacted me to tell me that what I did with my parents was not right and that I need to apologize to them. In the past week, I did not respond to them, so they took it upon themselves to try and reach out to me again. I had blocked my parents and my grandparents. So, my grandparents decided to make a new email account and sent me an email saying that they were very disappointed in the way that I had decided to choose to deal with this situation. They said they had realized that I had blocked them. And it was very surprising, because in the past 5 years, they had always tried their best to be on my side, but now they had realized that their decision to be diplomatic had been a bad one. And they should have just told me to my face that my parents were right about everything. And I did have an attitude problem that I needed to deal with. And there it was. They couldn't come up with a real reason to hate on me. So, they just started piggybacking on whatever my parents had been saying about me. Of course, they had to get personal for no reason, even though until today, they had always maintained that both my parents and I had different opinions on everything, and so they couldn't say who was right and who was wrong. I found that email extremely annoying. And when I showed it to Charlie, he just told me he was glad we hadn't apologized or reached out to anybody among these people because clearly they did not deserve it. They were all just selfish. And if anybody had an attitude problem, it was my family. Anyway, I did not reply to that email and I do not plan on doing so either because I really don't think it's worth my energy to argue with them or explain to them why I am right. The truth is, they will never think that I'm right because they just want to paint me to be the bad guy and they will keep finding excuses to do so. They're just mad that I'm getting married to Charlie, that I'm going to be rich now, and they're not going to be a part of my life, so they won't be able to benefit from my marriage. It's so weird because Charlie and I think that if they really wanted us to forgive them, they should have just been extra nice to us and tried to flatter our egos instead of acting like this. Their bitterness and resentment is just making things worse for themselves. And they don't even realize it. Or maybe they do. They just don't care about it. Either way, it doesn't matter because they're not going to be a part of my life at any cost. And after that, I pretty much forgot about whatever had been going on with my parents and my grandparents because it was not a matter of concern for me. They did not try to reach out to me after that. And I got busy with planning my wedding and a lot of other work as well. And then 3 days ago, my parents showed back up at my house again. And this time, Charlie was not at home. And I did not even open the door when I realized that it was them standing outside. I just told them that I did not want to waste my time arguing with them once again and I just wanted them to leave, and if they did not go away, I would not hesitate calling the police and then things would become really ugly for them. In spite of my warnings, my parents did not go away and my dad just started telling me that he did not want me to accept them back into my life again or whatever. He just wanted to tell me that him and my mother were really sorry about the way they had behaved the last time that they were here. After giving it a lot of thought, they had realized that they had just made the situation worse for themselves by refusing to accept the fact that I was not ready to forgive them right now. And now they wanted me to know that they were going to keep being sorry for how they had failed me repeatedly and keep apologizing until I forgave them. My mother even went on to tell me that they were ready to wait however long it took, even if it meant waiting their entire lives just for my forgiveness. That was a pretty heavy thing to say. And at that point, I felt obliged to open the door and explain to them that I did not know what to say to them. I didn't even know how to feel about the situation. But all I knew was that I was not ready to deal with them right now. I explained to them as politely and civilly as I could, that they did not need to constantly show up to tell me that they were sorry. I just wanted some space away from them, and maybe in a couple of years, if I wanted to, I would reach out to them. But for now, I just wanted them to leave me alone. Truth be told, I don't know for sure if I will be reaching out to them eventually, but just for the sake of it, I said that to them, and they seemed to feel better about the situation when I said that. And my mother told me that she would be looking forward to hearing from me, even if it didn't happen in a couple of years. She hoped that one day I would be able to forgive them. She started crying and told me that she and my father had always been very egoistic and too arrogant and proud to admit that they hadn't always been the best parents to me, especially around the time of my divorce. They said that they had been manipulated and brainwashed into believing that I was the one who had attitude problems. And since then, they have always just been very confused about me. Sometimes they feel like I'm not wrong, and at other times, they think that Nick was right about me, which is why their attitude towards me has always been so baffling. Personally, I don't think that it's a valid reason because I'm their daughter, for God's sake. They should know how I am as a person. But then as a child and even as a teenager, they didn't really give me enough time. So, it's not surprising that they don't know. Anyway, that is actually their fault, not mine, but I did not want to create a whole thing out of it. So, I just told them that whatever had happened in the past was already done. We could not change it. However, now the least that they could do if they really wanted me to forgive them was stay away from me and give me some time and space to heal. They did not say anything after that. They just quietly left. After Charlie came back home, I told him about how I had chosen to deal with the situation and whatever my parents and I had talked about when they visited. He told me that the situation could have turned out worse, but he was glad that it didn't. Anyway, I don't know how to feel about that now, so I'm just trying not to think about my parents. I'm focusing all my energy into planning my wedding and I hope it goes well. I got married last week and it was a total blast. Nobody from my immediate family attended, of course, since they were not invited. I did invite my maternal grandparents, but unfortunately since they live out of state and my grandpa has a lot of health issues, they could not attend. So, there were very few people from my family at the wedding. But even then, I did not mind because I knew that I had Charlie by my side and his family has pretty much made me a part of their family. So, I'm really grateful for that. My parents reached out to me a couple of days after the wedding from a burner phone to tell me that they had heard from my cousins that I was married now. And even though I did not want them at the wedding, they wanted to let me know that they were very happy for me and hoped that I would find happiness in my new life. Let that go. A lot of you guys must be of the opinion that I shouldn't even have responded to them. Nor should I have entertained them the last time that they visited me, and I should have just called the cops. But honestly, that would have led to more bitterness and hatred, and that would have inevitably led to more drama. So, I think this is much better. I'm not close with them and I don't think I will ever be, but at least we're not at each other's throats constantly. We're keeping things neutral, and I think that's what is best for everyone.